Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves for an unrelenting torrent of scorn and righteous fury as I lay bare the sickening farce that is the so-called interview between Dr. Jordan B. Peterson and Brett Cooper. This grotesque display of reactionary drivel, masquerading as intellectual discourse, is nothing less than a modern reincarnation of the Nazi cult of the mother, a vile celebration of regressive dogma and unbridled ignorance. First, let's direct our ire at Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, a man who has somehow hoodwinked a segment of the population into believing his pseudo-philosophical drivel holds the keys to existential truth. He sits there nodding sagely along to Brett Cooper's regurgitated conservative talking points as if he were the oracle of some profound wisdom. But what we have here is nothing more than a pompous charlatan, a man whose ideas are as vapid as they are dangerous. Peterson's relentless championing of traditional values and feminine virtue is a nauseating echo of the fascist glorification of motherhood and the nuclear family, not unlike the propaganda disseminated by Joseph Goebbels' Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda. It is a call to arms for those who yearn for a return to a mythical past, where the patriarch reigned supreme and women were shackled to their reproductive roles. This fetishization of the past is not just an intellectual failing, it is a moral one, hearkening back to the vile ethos of the Nazi regime. Enter Brett Cooper, the so-called voice for young women who embrace their femininity. What utter tripe! Her narrative of adversity and triumph is nothing more than a thinly veiled paean to far-right propaganda. She bemoans her trials in Hollywood, painting herself as a martyr in some grand battle against liberal hegemony. Yet her struggles amount to little more than the inconveniences of a privileged life, a far cry from the genuine oppression faced by those the Nazi regime sought to eradicate. Cooper's rhetoric is an insidious blend of self-pity and sanctimonious drivel, presented with all the subtlety of a Leni Riefenstahl film. Her rise to prominence on the Daily Wire is not a testament to her talent or insight, but to her willingness to serve as a mouthpiece for reactionary bile. She rails against Hollywood's moral decay while conveniently ignoring her complicity in the far-right echo chamber that is the Daily Wire. And what of Peterson's critique of higher education? It is presented with all the finesse of a jackbooted thug. He decries universities as breeding grounds for leftist indoctrination, painting a picture of campuses as monolithic entities of progressive thought. This is not just a gross oversimplification, it is a deliberate assault on the very notion of critical thinking, akin to the Gleichschaltung, the Nazi process of forced coordination, which sought to align all institutions with their ideology. The podcast's sickening glorification of conservative values and jingoistic patriotism is nothing short of a call to arms for a new breed of reactionary zealots. It is a rallying cry for those who yearn for a return to a homogeneous hierarchical society, where the right people hold all the power and dissent is crushed underfoot. This is nothing less than a blueprint for a fascist resurgence, cloaked in the language of tradition and morality. This podcast is a grotesque parody of intellectual discourse, a festering boil on the body politic. It is a clarion call for anyone with a modicum of decency and intellect to stand up and say, enough. Peterson and Cooper are not champions of free thought, they are purveyors of a new, insidious form of fascism, cloaked in the language of tradition and morality. They should be met not with applause, but with the full force of righteous indignation. This is not a discussion, it is a travesty, a modern-day Nazi cult of the mother, and it must be repudiated with all the fury and disdain it so richly deserves.